a way of life.
Just finished packing up. First runs of the weekend begin tomorrow morning, I believe at 8 or 9 o'clock. It's currently 2:14. Time to make it happen. So coming into this race, we've been struggling for a while. Since the Noble, Oklahoma divisional race last season, we've had this mysterious miss in the car, and we've changed quite literally everything there is to change on this machine to get it back to where it was. But we thankfully found the exact issue we were having at the Houston and Dallas divisionals this year after we tested at Houston Motorsports Park the night we got back home from the Dallas race. And we did it that way because the Dallas race and the Springnationals are actually back-to-back weekends. The issue we found at that test session though was completely unrelated to whatever was causing us problems at the end of last season. But anyway, the only piece that we did not get to test at that session was our fast carburetor, which we were having issues with in Dallas. So we got that carburetor to Dan Da Vinci during the test session that Sunday night, and the game plan was to get that back during the week and try it in Q2. And instead of trying it in Q1, we're going to take the exact same car that worked 2 runs in a row in testing and get some baseline numbers. So yeah, that's the game plan. Let's see how it works. Q1 went about as expected. You know, I was 0-0 on the tree and went 10-0s. So the only change I made going into Q2 was putting that faster carburetor back on the car. So as y'all can see by the numbers, Q2 was an all-around great session. I was 0-0 off the hit, and the carburetor picked the car up back to the 9-second zone. So that was a great run and much needed after all the struggles that we've been experiencing. So at this point in the day, they're hot lapping us pretty hard as there was only 4 sportsman classes in the race, and quotas were as low as 50 cars. So although it was a really quick turnaround, the situation still gave us a great opportunity to test the consistency of our car. So the only thing I changed going into Q3 was I lowered the front tire pressure by a little bit to get off of that 0-0 reaction time. So here we go. Now the altitude in Q3 shot up to 710 compared to 80 in Q2. So although the car did slow up to a 998, those numbers made pretty good sense for the conditions. Now on the reaction time side of things, I'd been 007, 000, and 003 at this point. The Dallas race last week was the first time I made the switch to foot braking in this car. And the reason I made the switch is because the two-step and the ignition were a couple of the things that we were looking at that could have been causing the miss that I talked about earlier in the episode. Since the Noble, Oklahoma divisional race last season, we've had this mysterious miss in the car. So during eliminations of the first race in Dallas last week, I was 008, 15, and 009 in the tree before the car missed all the way down the track again in round 3. I say all of that to illustrate though just how glued to the tree I've been at this 00 spot since making the switch to foot braking. And of course that makes me very confident about winning the race as long as the car does what it's supposed to do. So after Q3 it's about 1:45 p.m. and since Q3 was the last of the scheduled runs for the day, my plan was to head back to school, the University of Houston, to turn in an application that had to be turned in person by 5 p.m. that day. But lo and behold, the Nhra decided to add first round to the schedule for Friday. So at this point, my plan to not only turn in the application, but finish it was kind of up in the air. So the application though was extremely important because it allowed me to apply for a class called Key Accounts within the Program for Excellence in Selling at the university. And the Key Account class would allow me not only to manage partnerships, but to gain and retain them at a level of $10,000 to $200,000 for the sales program.
This Key Account class has broken, without question, the all-time record of sales in a semester. This class has closed almost $500,000 in partnerships for the program. That's ridiculous.
So not only having that type of responsibility, but getting the experience of going out and selling a true key account would be incredible for anyone at 20 years old, but specifically for me as a race car driver who's trying to go pro, getting that experience was perfect. So, you know, getting that application in was very important, not only to maximize my college experience, but to help ensure that what I want to do for a living really happens within the next 2 to 3, 5 years, you know? So yeah, that's where I was at this point. But on the racing side of things, going from Q3 to Q1, I didn't really know who I had as far as matchups go. So I was just kind of going away at the application, trying to get it done. And after they called a couple times, I was like, okay, I gotta stop, gotta go up there. And I ended up having one of the best drivers in the world, Jimmy Hidalgo Jr. So in first round, my father and I decided to dial the car honest and really depend on my reaction time to win the race. And things really went exactly to plan, you know, so I had a little bit of room down there as I think Cooter was trying to set up behind me, so I ripped it a couple times and ended up taking 13 at the stripe. Now with that run there with the spot that me and Cooter had, I could have tried to dial the car up and drive the stripe, or I could have even thrown in an effective spot drop in the mix. But for me personally, I think my success rate goes up when I just challenge my opponent to beat my package by dialing the car honest, granted that I'm hitting the tree as well as I was. Now if I was 50, 60, and 40 on the tree in qualifying, then yes, throwing some strategy in the mix in first round to give myself a better shot at winning would be justifiable and maybe even necessary against someone as good as Cooter. But if I was good on the tree every hit in qualifying like I was, and I have a consistent car, then I do not see the need to complicate the race for myself with different strategies just to try to confuse my opponent. I think this is where a lot of us sportsman racers get messed up. I think it's good for us to all take a step back sometime and realize it's okay to keep it simple as long as we can put up a package that's just going to be hard to beat. But anyway, that evening I got my Key Accounts application turned in just in time, and I got back to the track to enjoy the last sessions of pro qualifying. The next morning, I'll have Jeff Lopez, the current #7 Stock Eliminator driver in the world. So in round 2, a combination of communication and a lack of diligence on my part was my downfall. Before the run, I did not take the time to look at the weather alongside my dad. And usually what we'll do is we'll both look at it and then consult each other to come up with an agreed upon number. I got out of routine. That led to us seriously considering 2 numbers under the tower just before the round, and I elected to pick the slower of the 2 numbers, thinking that I could close it up down there. But as y'all could see, after I got dropped, that wasn't the case. So the moral of the story though on that one is to stick to your routine, because if I would have looked at the weather like I usually do, maybe I would have picked a number that was 100ths faster, which would have changed the race. Would have done that, there's no way I could say, but sticking to my routine would have eliminated that possibility. Another thing I learned in that round is that when you're racing a fast car like Jeff and you're holding numbers, but you don't know exactly what you need to do to kill what you're holding, you become very vulnerable. So if possible, every single run, you should know what you're holding and know exactly what you need to do to kill what you're holding. If I would have had that insight in this round, then as soon as I saw that the race was going to be hard to judge, I would have stopped looking at Jeff and refocused to my spot on the track where I could drop to kill whatever I was holding. And as long as I hit that drop correctly, then the race probably swings my way. All in all though, this was still a great weekend. You know, I was 000 to 11 on the tree within 5 runs. The car was the best it had been in a while. And although I didn't win, this still makes me confident going into my next one, the Nhra Heartland Nationals in Topeka coming up soon. So yeah, although this race was done after 2nd round, I also still had the opportunity to continue to learn to get closer toward my goal of racing in top fuel. So I learned from a current top fuel driver actually, and also an executive at a top fuel and funny car mega team, I guess you would say, about the business and sponsorship side of racing. So I won't name any names as far as who those people are or what their sponsors are, but here's what I learned from them. So number 1, not all sponsorships are what they seem. You know, a lot of people think that sponsorship is all about exposure, and it's really not. What it is all about though is the business solutions that you can provide to your sponsor. So let me give you one example that I learned over this weekend. So our current team has a parts company as a sponsor who's an actual retailer. Someone within that team though has relationships with the various brands and manufacturers who have their products sold at this retail chain. So what the team is doing is getting these brands and manufacturers to discount the wholesale rate that they're selling to the retailer. So the retailer is saving money or making more profit when they're selling at their chain of stores across the country. So basically, the sponsorship that the race team is getting from the retail parts chain on the side of the car is purely the discounts that these brands and manufacturers are giving that retail chain because of the team's relationships. Another example comes from a team who had a primary partner who sold a single product line. So the team put together a deal for that primary partner to give away their advertising space in the car and give it to an auto parts retailer. But in return, the actual sponsor who sold a single product line got to get their products into that retailer store. So again, it was not about exposure for that sponsorship, but it was about the business solution that the team could provide via their relationships. So a big takeaway I want you to take from both of these examples is also that relationships matter. Even though a relationship may not be the only thing you need to close a deal, it can still be a key ingredient in having the right conversations with the right people within a company to talk about a potential deal. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys right now. I hope this video helped you win some future rounds and close some future sponsorship deals. Whatever your goals are in this sport, keep going at them as hard as you can. Stay in faith and remember to enjoy the journey. You know, us as drag racers, we're incredibly blessed to do something as amazing as this. We truly are. So it'd be doing ourselves a disservice not to take a step back every now and then and just realize how blessed you are to do what we do. So with that said, thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Champion. And I'll see you guys at the next one.